Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1194. Good morning, darling. Carl moved from the tiny world of the Titan clans, failed immortal to his own just in time to find Dana waking up for the morning. Good morning, darling. I hope that I didn't make you wait too long? Carl greeted her, then saw the tiny dragon girl behind her. Carl, this is Button. She said that you didn't have an opportunity to do a full round of greetings when they first arrived. Dana replied, then placed a kiss on his cheek. Good morning, Button. What would you both like for breakfast? The little dragon hugged his leg, then grabbed them both by one hand. It's the lake team's turn to cook breakfast. They're making breakfast burritos, she announced. Everyone who isn't involved in a project first thing in the morning gathers for breakfast so that they don't lose their sense of community now that they're spread out to a half-dozen different locations. Dana explained. Button nodded eagerly. Not everyone works all day every day. I'm usually on egg duty, but I've got 3 whole days off. Forest dragons are good with chickens, so I volunteer to collect the eggs all the time. The chicken coops are over by the grain and potato fields. The ones by the yellow-striped divine grass. Carl knew where she meant and nodded in agreement. I bet that you're wonderful with the chickens. Now, did you want to fly over or walk? It's a fairly long walk, Carl asked. Nearly 2 kilometers to be exact. Button took a twig out of her pocket and mumbled for a second, then smiled. We can walk. They're still cooking tortillas, so it will be half an hour before breakfast is ready. You smell funny. Did you cuddle a black dragon last night? The Dana mage is very soft in fox form. Good to sleep next to, she asked. Carl laughed. There was a troublesome place where someone failed to reach immortality and I had to clean the broken magic from it. That's why I smell like death magic. Dana hadn't gotten that part of the message from him, and she gave him a suspicious frown, but let the little dragon lead them out onto the pathway that led from the house down to the lake. They were far from the only ones that were headed in that direction. The residents were coming from every corner of the tiny world to gather for breakfast before going back to their duties. This is quite the place you've set up while we were busy. Did you do all this while we were planning the wedding? Dana asked as they walked, swinging Button between them as the tiny transformed dragon laughed. Yeah, everything kind of happened at the same time, and I added the expansion to the Drod workshop, the extra space in the tiny world, and the caretakers all within a few days. It's working out pretty well though. Look how well the spirit grass is growing. Carl explained. That might be because Thor isn't here to snack on it. Dana reminded him. Still, it's growing very well, and the stuff in his space is too. By the time that we get back, he'll have a massive stockpile of the good stuff to snack on. Carl joked. Button giggled. This place has so much good stuff. Did you make it just to supply everyone's favorite things? Carl winked at her. Not quite. Some of the things here are not edible, there for making potions. Button shrugged. Forest dragons can eat almost anything. There are few things that are toxic to us. At most they might be super spicy. Carl smirked at the little dragon. You look like the sort that likes super spicy things. And the sort that taste tested all the plants to find out which ones were spicy. Button laughed as she lifted her legs to swing by her arms between Carl and Dana. Not all of them. My big sister told me about lots of plants and what ones don't taste good. Then she pointed out every new plant that they walked past and the merits of its flavor, nutrition, and the value that it provided to the ecosystem that it was growing in. Forest dragons instinctively knew an immense amount about the world, especially plants. But also the wildlife that should be in a region. It's a good thing that we brought rabbits with us. Not just because they're fun to chase around, but they're also good at keeping the plant growth under control. I know the goal is to grow as much as possible in the fields, but they aren't the only part of the space that grows too fast. I swear we're gonna have to start giving them away soon. Bunnies breed so fast and I can only eat so many of them in 1 year. But the elves know lots of good recipes for them. She elaborated. The elves do? Carl asked, not sure if he believed her. Button giggled. Right? They won't eat them, but they know how to cook them really well. But our elves here are much more open-minded than most. Did you know that the leader will actually eat eggs? An elf that eats eggs. She let go of their hands as they approached the picnic area at the beach, where the ladies had 4 large grills set up frying sausage and eggs for the breakfast burritos, while another pair of druids conjured buckets full of what smelled like salsa, and a pair of grills in the back made pancakes with fruit in them. That would likely be for their vegetarian members. Well, the vegetarians and the children, because as much praise as she had given the breakfast burritos, the first place Button went was to the stack of cooked pancakes to roll one up and pop it in her mouth like a cigar as she tried to get between the cooks and the grills to see what else was cooking. Forest dragons and Lotus had more in common than even they knew. Chapter 1195. Breakfast at the beach. Sir, Madam, welcome. We're just finishing the first round of breakfast for those who need to get through their morning tasks before the morning sun gets too warm. You don't mind waiting a moment, do you? The Orcish woman cooking asked. No problem at all. Let me go collect Button and we will keep her out from underfoot until the food is ready. Dana agreed. The orc laughed and gestured to the small stack of pancakes beside the other grill. If she becomes a handful, just give her one in a different flavor. Having food in both hands short-circuits her brain and she doesn't know what to do. Button laughed, but Carl noticed that she didn't deny it. Dana led them to a blanket laid out on the sand and sat down with the young dragon in her arms as Button prattled on about the varieties of fish that lived in the lake and the relative merits of the flavor of each of them. The only one that I wouldn't eat is Bob. Bob ate one of the water elemental stones that are forming at the bottom of the lake, and I think that he's going to evolve into a proper magical beast soon. I hope nobody fishes him up before then. Button finished. Oh? Actual magical beasts living in the tiny world would be quite something. You know, before we left our hometown, Carl paid someone to start a farm to raise magical beasts so that they could be bonded partners and friends to people. Dana informed her. Button's eyes lit up with excitement. Literally. You started a petting zoo? But where you can take them home. That is awesome. I asked the others, but they said that it would never work out. Something about magical beasts not being able to become a druid's partner. Carl nodded. They're not wrong. Druids can't bond them as partners. But there are some classes that can. Mine is one of them, and I have a skill for druids and rangers who have reached the bottleneck of their class that will let a magical or divine beast to choose to bond with them. The beast gets to choose? Button asked, confused by the concept. I am a beast master, you see. Well, a beast master champion now. My class is focused on the beast, so instead of a skill that forces them to bond with someone who has a class, it works the other way around. The skill is used on the beast and then they get to pick their partner. Carl explained. Button smirked. I'm a magical beast. Does that mean that you could use the skill on me and let me adopt someone? Dana poked her on the nose. No causing trouble for others. You've already been adopted by the whole village, you don't need a skill for that. But I talked to Kara the other day and she gets her own spot for naps where nobody can come wake her up and make her work. Button pouted. Carl can wake her up at any time when she's in her space. If you got the new nap spot, whoever it was bonded to would be responsible for making sure that you didn't miss your shifts. But when you grow up, you might have different priorities. Dana reminded the little dragon. Button frowned at her. How could something be more important than having a friend that you can bother forever? Dana smirked at Carl. You know, her methodology might be flawed, but I do believe that she has ended up at the right conclusion anyhow. A teenaged elf set down a stack of breakfast burritos next to them, and then a pitcher of iced tea on the sand beside the blanket. Don't go corrupting our Button. Her innocence is one of her selling points. She warned. Dana ruffled the little dragon's hair, making the branches shake. Of course not. Did you want to join us for breakfast, or did you have work to do? She asked. Sure, I'll join you. I'm on the same schedule as Button, so I'm off all day today. It didn't take Dana long to realize the situation. She was the group's babysitter, for the lack of a better word. While the only relative that Button had in the group was her older sister, the elder forest dragon had duties to attend to that kept her busy for most of the day, so someone needed to keep Button out of trouble. She was the youngest of the group, with the appearance of a girl, no more than 5, as there were no men in the village that had transferred here. Though with the speed dragons naturally aged at, she should be at least 10 or 15 years old. Still very much a child, but one with enough power and capability to fetch eggs in the morning. A lot of eggs, it seemed. Exactly how many chickens do you have? Carl asked as he watched the cooks pour another pitcher of mixed eggs onto the oiled grill. More than 20. Button announced confidently. The elf rolled her eyes. While she is not wrong, I can't say that she's right. There are 400 chickens in the space spread between 4 zones. Mostly they are present for pest control, but they also tear up the dirt and help improve soil quality. The eggs are a bonus. Carl spread his mind through the space and found what they meant. The chickens weren't exactly free-range, they had erected magical barriers to keep them in a few acres worth of space. But they were otherwise just roaming free doing chicken things. And it was helping both the soil and the plant life, as they had said. You know, we're supposed to be on vacation, a pre-wedding honeymoon, as we're expecting to be busy afterward. So why don't we enjoy the day here? Kara and Tion are both outside exploring the other space, but they can return at will. Carl suggested. He knew that they could because Kara had already been in and out of her space a few times collecting items and then taking items out. Her thoughts said that she was preparing a treasure hunt like a proper trial ground for whoever came next, but she was keeping all the good rewards for herself and swapping them with stuff from her loot pile. Chapter 1196. Kara's Obstacle Course. Button's smile turned calculating and the elf sighed. You know that you just volunteered for an entire day of playing whatever strange games she can come up with, right? Carl winked at the caretaker. It's not a problem. We're here to relax, have fun, and perhaps build a bit more spiritual strength to help reach the mythic rank more quickly. That is all that we've got planned for the day. Even if we spend hours playing in the water or running through the woods, it's not a problem. The elf laughed. When Ophelia and Sister Lotus come to visit, it's so much easier. That bear is spectacular at keeping them both in line. Do you know when they'll be able to visit again? Not much longer. The tiny world is tied to my location right now. And I had to head to another continent, so they're home taking care of business right now. Once we return, I'm certain that Lotus will demand to come back and see everyone here. They have Thor and Tessa to keep them entertained, plus all the crafting specialists at the house. Carl explained. Button nodded eagerly. Sister Lotus told us all about the bunnies and the fluffy gargoyles. Maybe the next time that I have days off I can go visit? Her pleading eyes immediately made Dana soften, and Carl petted the little dragon's head. If we're around the house in Xylaz where the bunnies and the fluffy gargoyles are, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you're gonna go visit them, you might get snapped up for lessons. We've got dozens of blue dragons at the guild houses now, and they do daily school lessons for all our younger members. Don't think that just because you're visiting you won't have to learn. Carl teased. Button extracted a stick from her hair, and Carl realized that she had tucked a pencil into a braided section that he had assumed was just tangled. I am always ready to learn. My sister taught me. But do you know what we should do today? Cliff diving. There is a great spot over there where we can jump off and then swim. Button suggested. Carl was about to respond when Tion came into the tiny world, looked around, and then settled down on Dana's lap. Did you find out what you wanted to know? Carl asked the baby fox. Tion nodded happily. Yes, I understand what it is that sets holy and unholy magic apart. My work there is done, and Kara is nearly finished. She's just making a list of traps and obstacles that she wants you to make for the treasure hunt. Kara poked at Carl's mind. It's going to be glorious. But we don't have much time. Now that the killing effect is beginning to fade, the giants are on their way here. I felt their magic probing the entrance to the space, so they know for sure that the effect was in this area. I don't think that they found the separate space yet, but you can see it just standing there, so we might have to move right quick before they arrive. But not before you finish making this stuff. If the giants were coming to investigate the loss of the suppression effect, they would surely send mythic rank Titan clan members, so Carl wasn't sure what Kara thought that they could accomplish with an obstacle course type trial. Carl used earth manipulation to carve stones to make the requested effects, and then chuckled as he saw that the last item on the list was a self-recharging mana crystal to cause the effects to reappear on a timer. Tion and Button were chasing each other around the beach as Carl finished working and Dana relaxed in the sun, letting breakfast settle before they got active for the morning. Carl passed the completed items into Kara's space, and the Chaos Badger began to place everything to her satisfaction. Alright, one more spell and we're all done. You need to come outside for a minute, so that your tiny world doesn't interfere with my plans. Kara insisted. I will be right back. Kara needs assistance. Carl whispered, then shifted back to the other world to see what Kara had done. There were 20 different kinds of golems, all sorts of magical plants, 100 or so random magical items, and a bunch of illusionary monsters. The world was filled with dangers and rewards, but Kara was waiting by the exit for Carl to step outside. Alright, what is your plan? Carl asked. Well, if I'm right, then once I use this skill, your contribution will make rewards respawn one day after they're claimed. The same with the monsters and golems. It's a good thing that you got that epic golem spell, it wouldn't be the same without it. Kara explained. New racial skill learned. Chaotic Zone. Creates a system-linked training ground for a maximum of 1 hour per caster rank. That skill sounded suspiciously simple for what Carl knew that the Badger had in mind. Then she smirked at him and cast the spell on the entrance to the failed immortal's tiny world. The portal narrowed to a pinprick for a moment, then reopened as a shimmering blue trial instance entrance. Victory! I taught the new place the rule of chaos, and with all that undead energy and the unholy rule already there, it really did make a new space. This will be so much fun. We can make trial towers and dungeons and sparring spaces and self-replenishing gardens and an infinite source of baby dragons. Kara rambled. That sounded like it might actually get him in real trouble. Where did she plan to get enough dragon eggs to stock an instance? She couldn't have the ones from the tiny world, at least not all of them. But Carl had other concerns of a more immediate variety. They were not going to be alone for long, as either the change to the space or the reduction in the suppression effect had drawn a huge number of mythic ranked Titan clan giants to their location, and they had brought an entire army of totems with them. Chapter 1197. Sure, you can enter. Carl simply waited as the giants approached. If they were going to attack, he would jump back in the separate space to buy time to teleport away. If things went the way that he thought that they should, now that the space had reformed with Kara's changes, he should be put in a separate instance. A massive Titan with 6 arms, the first Carl had ever seen like him, held up his hand to stop the others as he approached to just under a kilometer from Carl. out of comfortable attack range but close enough that sensitive ears would hear each other. Demon, do you know what happened to the suppression artifact? He asked in what Carl assumed was the giant's version of a polite tone. Carl nodded. Failed. The artifact is still in there but inactive. I cleansed the killing curse from the area to explore, but as you can see it is a trial instance. No matter what I do it will just reset in a day. The big giant frowned. The demon had a point. Even if they reactivated the artifact, whatever idiot had lost it in a trial instance had doomed it to a slow death as the effect aged. What did you find inside? The Titan asked. It's the site of a failed attempt to reach the immortal rank. Perhaps they thought that the space would protect them from tribulation lightning, but it did not. That was the cause of the undead energy that was killing everyone who got nearby. The body was that of a four-armed member of the Titan clan, but I couldn't tell when they might have entered. Sometime since the last resurgence, obviously. But other than that, I was unable to tell. You did leave the corpse there, right? Carl asked Kara. All of them. I don't need old cloth and bones. I only took the good stuff and replaced it. The giant was silent for an entire minute as he considered Carl's answer. Where did you come here from? He finally asked. Saihosesa. The Supreme Lady asked me to look into the issue. Carl explained. The Titan growled, an annoyed noise, not a threat. Then you should be free to leave now that your work is done. Carl nodded. I will return to the west and leave your armies to explore the anomaly. It should be relatively safe. You're all powerful sorts after all. Kara, do you sense anything like another world in their sense or auras? Nope, they're all from near here. I can smell the spell from inside the space on them. But that big Titan, I think that he's originally from somewhere else. Or his parents were. He's too powerful to belong to the same clan as the others. Like Big Sister Matilda, his species is meant to be immortal. Kara replied. That was valuable information for certain. Carl examined the Titan's aura for a little longer while the leader conferred with his people. Once he was sure that he had it memorized, he turned and opened a portal to the Glatt region, as there were no more refugees there. Even if the Titans followed him, they would end up in the middle of nowhere. Once he stepped through the portal, Carl opened another portal, this time to the sky above Xylaz. Titans likely couldn't fly, and the residents of Xylaz could take care of themselves if the giants were crazy enough to try to launch an invasion. A short flight brought him to the Alliance house, where Carl returned to the tiny world. He still had vacation days to take before anyone realized that he was finished with his other work. However, the Titan clan was left utterly baffled. The suppression effect had not faded that much, even though it was no longer actively increasing. Carl had set it to 1% of maximum output, but the effect was more like stacked layers than a variable barrier. Every hour of every day it put out a little more, and some older layers naturally dissipated. So while the effect had faded by a marginal amount and the intensity no longer tried to kill anything that approached, there was still a massive amount of mana suppression in the region. They had needed an entire ritual and a portal stone array to get the armies here. But the demon had simply opened a portal with a wave of his hand and walked away. They would blame the Chaos Dragon for that. When chaos got involved, common sense no longer applied. There was no way for them to know that Carl was simply able to spend hundreds of times the normal amount of mana to activate the spell. Immortal Lord, what do we do now? The commander at the Titan's right side asked. Send in a team and see what is inside that trial. If we can get answers, we might find the secret to true immortality. The demon said that the last one to enter failed, but that might not be entirely true. You can never take the words of a cat demon at face value. The commander motioned for a team to move forward, and the first giant proudly stomped through the portal, sword in hand. Then came flying back out. Damnation! The demon lured a massive dire bear to the entrance when he left. Totem rank, he explained. The other Titans chuckled at his misfortune. He might be a mythic rank giant, but he had just been forcibly hurled from the trial instance by the first guardian standing at the door. The next time they entered in a group of 3 and realized that there was not just one but 2 massive bears standing guard by the entrance. Whoever set this trial was a cruel bastard. The team leader complained as he sent a system message to call the rest of his team inside. Perhaps they didn't know that skills were going to be suppressed here? If we could freely use skills within this nightmare zone, it wouldn't be a problem to beat down a pair of totem-ranked bears no matter how fast they heal. His companion suggested. What I want to know is how that demon dealt with this. He must have stealth abilities of some sort. The team leader agreed. The door guardians fell and the giants got their first good look at the instance. It was massive, hundreds of kilometers across. They were going to need more people. Chapter 1198. Day off. Chapter 1198. Day off. Kara mumbled in satisfaction as she dreamed about all the lovely things that were going to happen to the giants when they entered the space, and then the fun they were going to have when they got ejected after just one day of exploration and the dungeon reset. She just wished that she knew for sure whether it would let lots of them in or just 5 at a time. If she knew that, she could have made a better design for them. Dana and the elf were waiting for Carl to return while Button was in dragon form swimming in the lake. Sorry I took so long. I've got everything sorted out now and we're back at the Alliance house. Matilda's assignment should be finished, we just need to report it to her. Carl explained. And did Kara get everything that she wanted? Dana asked. All that and more. The issue with the other space should be all sorted out now, and the Titan clan came to investigate but didn't start any trouble before I left. They'll decide if the space is worth messing with, but I altered the array that was creating the effect enough that they shouldn't be able to change the output again. Given a few years, the effect should fade enough that system activations start like normal. Perhaps sooner, as the mana on that continent is so dense. Then what is the plan for today? Dana asked. Well, I think that Button is voting that we splash around naked in the lake for a few hours, then maybe a nice lunch on the mountain. Cuddle and meditate on the truths of the universe for a while, then join the ladies for a dinner. Carl suggested. Dana tried not to laugh at Button's enthusiastic cheering. The little dragon wasn't sure what meditation was, but if it was used in the same sentence as cuddling, it should be a form of nap. After swimming all morning, she could always use a nap, even if she was still supposed to pick up the afternoon chicken eggs. Once they realized that Carl and Dana weren't busy with anything important, more of the caretakers who had the day off came to join the party. They set out blankets, brought snacks and tea, and generally doted on Button and the young elf who Carl had just learned was named Lyric. Carl changed into swim trunks and Button came splashing out of the water in dragon form. I want cute swim clothes too, she complained. Carl checked Ray's space quickly and found a ruffle-trimmed black one-piece bathing suit among the piles of swimwear. That should do for Button. Here, equip this, it will look good on you. Button looked confused for a second after she transformed back to human. She had never equipped an item before. But once she held the swimsuit and focused on wearing it, everything happened smoothly. Oh, that is cute. If you have one in forest green, that would be even better. One of the ladies suggested. Carl nodded. I will see if I can get one made later. I only had black in that style available, but stock is fairly low right now and most of the swimsuits are made for adult bodies. That could be an issue. We only have a few children here, so I hadn't thought about needing children's fashion. Now Lyric would be fine in a bikini, but it would just look wrong on Button. The older woman simply smiled and stepped into the water up to her neck before removing her dress and throwing it to Lyric on the shore. The elf hung it from a branch so the freshly washed dress could dry out, and Button ran back into the water in her new swimsuit to join the fun. That started a mass exodus from the shore, with clothes left on blankets or hung over branches depending on whether the wearer decided to rinse them in the lake first. It was the perfect change of pace. Nobody needed to get anything done today, just play at the beach. After an hour or so, one of the druids made a waterslide with water magically created at the top. That appeared to be a favorite game for the caretakers, as Lyric immediately brought out a bunch of painted wooden hoops for the one coming down the slide to try to gather before they came to a stop. Unfortunately for Button's big plans, her energy level did not last until lunch, and she was already beginning to nod off when the sandwiches were brought out. I'm not asleep. I swear I'm awake. Can we fly up to the mountain for our nap? She pleaded right before her eyes drooped closed again. Carl laughed and held out an arm to Lyric as he picked up the sleeping dragon. Do you want me to give you a ride? It's faster to fly. If you don't, it's a long walk up the mountain. Dana had an odd smile on her face as she watched Carl carry the pair up into the air, but she didn't say anything and instead decided to play rock, paper, scissors with Lyric to keep the elf from panicking about the heights. Lyric was a druid, but she didn't have a skill that would let her fly. At least not yet. We should find a way for them to gain experience. Something that will give them skill points so that they can fill out the druid skill tree faster than just taking care of plants. Elves might live a long time, but I heard the others mention that they're getting about 1 skill point a year. That's much too slow. Dana messaged Carl. Carl nodded. I think that I have the right spell for that. Or I can make one. Like a smaller trial tower for them to practice inside. That would also be a wonderful addition to the tiny world for other visitors. But before he started on constructing a trial tower, they had a whole day of relaxation planned and a sleepy dragon to put down for her nap. Chapter 1199. 72-point matrix. Chapter 1199. 72-point matrix. Carl placed blankets in a pile for Button while Lyric tried not to laugh. You know, they told me that you are a beastmaster by system class. But you really do have an affinity for young beasts. The elf joked. Or they have an affinity for me. But I've lost my nap spot. Carl joked with a gesture to Dana's lap, where Button had curled up in dragon form with her head propped on a pillow to keep it from dangling off the side. Lyric giggled and gently stroked Button's head, making the sleeping dragon purr. What are you meditating about? She asked quietly. We're working on developing the mental power matrix. It helps your energy and mental strength growth. Are you familiar with the idea? Carl asked. Lyric shook her head. All right, if you want to join us, we can start with the basics. Focus on a simple image, something meaningful to you. A leaf, a berry, not something complex like a face. Focus on forming that image in your mind and then pulling power into that image. It will help focus your energy flows so you can move mana more effectively. Carl explained. Lyric nodded and began to focus. Carl didn't know what she was using as a focal point, but he could feel her energy shift and a trickle of outside energy begin to enter her body. That was success, at least in the early steps. So he left her to it and began to focus on his own advancement. The next step in his progression was to adjust his power matrix to the 72-point formation that would be the next proper visualization of Matilda's form. It was possible that he could pick another visualization and go for a 36 or 48-pointed matrix, but nothing that he had come across so far would make a better base than the Chaos Dragon. But Carl was confident. His mental strength had been optimized and improved not only by skills but also by system trials. If anyone could make the adjustment at totem rank, it should be him. Plus, Azov had suggested that the stage he was at was just the bare minimum for a myth to make it to immortality, so surely just one step beyond shouldn't be impossible. Mapping out the new points took time but proved to be surprisingly simple. The image just settled into his mind as if it had always been there, and Carl went straight to work rearranging the existing points to fit the new matrix, then energizing the new points so that they could balance. He vaguely noticed when a warm weight moved to his lap, but it was scaly, not furry. So it had to be Button and not Dana. When you meditated and surrounded yourself with mana, especially in the tiny world with its mana crystal reserves and innate attunement to Carl's aura, the process radiated body temperature magical energy. Dragons weren't cold-blooded. But like cats, they tended to congregate in warm and sunny spots to rest. Using some of the stored energy of the tiny world and emptying his own internal mana reserves, Carl finalized the new power matrix and then began to circulate power through it. Ding! The chiming sound sounded in Carl's mind like someone had rung a church bell beside his ear, making his whole sense of self vibrate. He was vaguely aware that his body was not moving, but his soul and metaphysical self were shaking from the vibration, and he didn't know why. As the vibration settled, Carl tentatively pulled at the power matrix again, using it to refine power to a higher standard than what he had before. The power flooded through him like a raging torrent and then circulated again as the matrix continued to purify and improve it. His personal mana had been depleted, but now that the standard was higher, he had to change all the mana stored in the beast spaces, and that was going to take hours at the very least. Fortunately, nobody was in a hurry to move. Only when the shifting sun put his lap out of the direct light did Button begin to stir, and the others started to get hungry. That was productive. Lyric, how did it go for you? Carl asked as he opened his eyes to find Button staring at his face from centimeters away, the same way that Carl liked to. Amazing. I think I understand how the focal point works now, and my power is so much more vibrant, if that's the right word. If I practice it long enough, I'm sure that I can advance. Carl nodded. I will find a study guide so that you can start to form the matrix after you have mastered the first point. I just don't know what version elves and druids would want to use. I use one attuned to chaos. Dana uses one attuned to the god of magic. But I think that for you it should be something more like a nature god. Lyric nodded. That makes sense. I used a lotus flower as my focus, it just felt right. So one of the nature gods, perhaps even the green dragon's path, would be appropriate? I don't know how it works, but that sounds like it should be okay. Button just looked back and forth between them with no clue what they were talking about. If it was important, someone would explain later. Are we going down for dinner? There should be food soon. The sun is in the food spot, the little dragon asked. Now that you've had your nap, why don't we fly over? I will transform so Dana and Lyric can ride on my back, and we will fly around until dinner is ready. That would also give him a chance to look in on how all the dragon eggs were doing and make sure that none of the crops had been missed or ignored. Some of the most valuable plants only had a few specimens in the whole tiny world, but they were vital to Remy's work. Chapter 1200. Energetic Button. Carl transformed, and Button immediately crawled on top of his neck, defeating the whole purpose of flying around to wear her out instead of letting a freshly rested baby dragon drive everyone insane after an all-afternoon nap. Dana poked her once Carl launched himself into the air. You're supposed to be his flying buddy, not just sightseeing. She reminded Button. Right. He's so fast though. But the Carl will slow down so I can keep up, I'm sure. Button reluctantly agreed as she flapped her wings to take flight. Carl laughed and activated Behemoth on her, which still only made the dragon 3 meters long. But the extra wingspan made it much easier to keep up with Carl's casual cruising speed as he toured the major areas of the tiny world. Oh, there are the swamp camp workers and the new eggs. There's a big one there that I'm pretty sure will be an earth dragon. And there are the juniper bushes. And the ghost tree stand. Those trees are kind of creepy in the dark. The glowing spots look like ghosts. They flew a full loop around the tiny world until Button's wings started to flap out of sync and her constant descriptions began to lag. Just ride on my back the rest of the way. I will drop you in the lake for a nice cool swim before dinner. Carl suggested. Those were magic words, and Button quickly settled in on his head, watching the ground fly by under them as Carl returned to the beach. As they got close, Dana grabbed Lyric and jumped off his back, flying back toward the group so that Carl could turn and dive, dunking Button into the lake. Button laughed as she flapped her wings to swim through the clear water, and then burst into the air, splashing water as she shook herself off before landing and transforming to human for dinner. Carl walked to the edge of the lake in dragon form, then transformed and put on swim shorts. Oh, you have a human form too? That's pretty cool. Lyric noted. Carl patted her on the head. This is what I looked like when I was younger. Now I've got plenty of appearances to pick from. Button gave him an awestruck look while the older druids tried not to laugh. It was just a human, a beast, and a dragon form. If Button followed that path in her skill tree, she would also learn to transform into either an animal or werbeast form soon. But Carl had successfully kept her entertained all day, which made it much easier to get everything done, and for the sake of their peace of mind they wouldn't call him out. Did you have plans for tomorrow? The elf on kitchen duty asked instead. Not big ones. I'm almost done adjusting the power matrix. I just need to balance the power of all the points, and then I should be ready to start trying to improve my strength again. Then we've got our wedding coming up in a few days. I'm sure that I sent out the invitations already. I just don't recall who all was able to come. Carl replied. The elf chuckled. Well, we were going to send Button and Lyric plus Joanna and Chrisanna. Button cheered at the news that she would be invited to a big fancy event, and Kara woke up wondering what the good news was. Just Button celebrating her invitation to the wedding. Carl informed her. Oh, the baby dragon. We should eat and then I will take her to play. If that didn't wear the dragon out for the night, nothing would. It was a regular thing, however. The moment that Kara appeared, everyone waved to her and Button ran up to give the badger a hug. We have the good dinner today. They're making the super spicy tofu and onion stuff. Button explained. Kara gave her 2 enthusiastic thumbs up and then flopped on her back so the dragon could rub her belly. Just living her best life. The caretakers brought out a low table for Kara and Button while Carl led Dana to the arranged picnic tables to eat with the others who were working in the area. You've got a pretty good arrangement going here, Carl noted as the dishes were placed out on the tables. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. This space is practically perfect. There's just so much of everything and nobody threatening us or stealing our crops. Even the little ones have been better behaved since we arrived. You might not believe it, but Button used to be a little troublemaker, always angry and starting arguments with others. But now that she's got the lake and the mountain plus all that forest instead of open grassland, she's been so much happier. I would like to say that Kara is helping, but she just encourages Button to come up with new pranks. The elf who had been cooking replied with a deep sigh. Well, she is a chaos badger. Pranks are as necessary to her as food and water. As much as they hated to admit it, Carl had a point. It was only natural that a chaos badger required chaos to survive, and that a young forest dragon, the closest of the dragons to the Fey species, would be drawn to them. Forest dragons were once known to play with nymph sprites and other creatures of the forest during the last resurgence when such creatures were more common. Now both were rare to see and most of the ancient forests had been cut down or destroyed by battles. Should we do something about those too? Dana whispered as Kara and Button began to draw pictures in the sand, plotting their evening shenanigans. We could invite Lotus in, Carl offered. Dana paused. Would that be better or worse? If they brought Lotus, she would likely bring Ophelia, who might help keep order. But she might also just let them run wild until they were tired so that she could have a good nap with an exhausted priestess. Chapter 1201, Minor Adjustment. Kara and Button were the perfect partners in crime because they were nearly the same size, so Button fit everywhere that Kara wanted to go. Most of her prank partners were significantly larger than she was, but Button could follow her down all the smaller tunnels. Today's mission was to sneak into the dark dragon egg nest and rearrange all the lamps that the caretakers had left to help them find their way around. Carl could hear Kara's plan in her mind, but there weren't too many tunnels in the mountain, so at the very worst tomorrow morning's shift would be lost for about 10 minutes before they found their way to the nest. That wasn't a prank that was really worth stopping in his mind. Most of them would make their way out by memory anyhow, even with the light locations changed. Once dinner was done, Carl took Dana back to their room in the duplicate guild house and locked the door before activating the soundproofing spell. They were going to need that. They did find some time to meditate and attempt to improve their power levels before morning though. With the upgraded power matrix, energy flowed into Carl at a truly astounding rate, fast enough that even Opal was impressed with his ability to restore the mana that he had used up while rearranging the focal points. He didn't want to waste any time getting it perfect before the wedding, as he was reasonably sure that either someone was going to notice that they were back or Matilda was going to come get them in the next day or two at the most. Once that happened, everything was going to get hectic right until the day of the wedding. But come to think of it, he didn't even know who was on the guest list. Or where they were holding the wedding. Those sorts of minor details seemed like things that he should be aware of, but none of the beasts were concerned about it. Ray's attention hardly even flickered away from her design project when he mentioned it. She had finished the requests for the vampire covens that she had met at the winter gala, and now she was on to making outfits for the wedding guests that she didn't trust to dress themselves. Which was basically everyone, as most of the ones she might trust to dress themselves were already planning to go in one of her outfits. The only one that was interested in their return was Remy, as she wanted to harvest some of the plants in the tiny world, and with Carl so far away she had to wait. Her alchemists were doing wonderful things though. With everyone doing their best in the new workspace, the Darklight host had actually nearly managed to restock their guild store during the week that Carl was away. There were still some things that were on backorder. But Sapphire had been spending every hour of the day either conducting experiments to improve the classes of the warriors or making products with runecrafting to fill the custom orders for totem rank items. She had yet to make a mythic rank item for anyone but herself, and she had no intentions of doing it. Having a trade skill was a wonderful thing, but she had no intentions of letting it interfere with her other studies. Despite Carl's intention to remain in bed with Dana all day, the return of Remy to the tiny world was a trigger to let everyone else know that they were back from their mission, and before noon Matilda was waiting for them downstairs with a whole list of wedding-related chores. Good. You got that settled well enough. The matter of the dragon hunters coming to this world and how the Titans managed to sneak children from the immortal realm here can be dealt with later. The continent will slowly begin to regain access to the system, and that is what matters. Now I will know what to look for if they try to put a new mana suppression barrier up. Matilda informed Carl as he came down to get food. Carl sighed. There is a lot to unpack in that sentence. But you are right, we can deal with other continents' problems later. How are we going to arrange pickup for all the guests? Matilda smiled. I have arranged portals for the ones on the Dragon Isles. So that just leaves the ones that are not on the Dragon Isles. That part will be just so much fun. It wouldn't be right for me to go get them. The old myth would get all cranky, and then I'd have to suffer his incessant complaining messages. Letting him have system access back was a mistake. For a follower of the god of death to be annoyed with you is the worst thing in the world. They're not even afraid of death, so you can't properly threaten them to shut up. Carl chuckled. Well, with each of you in charge of a continental region, I suppose it is necessary that you keep in touch. Plus, he's also properly aged. I believe that he will reach immortality soon. With the mana levels on the planet's surface recovering, it should be possible for him to ascend without leaving soon. Matilda agreed. Which meant that they would have forever to annoy each other. So I will be going to pick everyone up from the Golden Dragon Nation? How many are on the guest list? Carl asked. Not too many. The parents of the bride and groom, the king Ahmad, the catman Othello Nact Misty, the drake rider Kenichi Neal, and Ray's baby rogue Sybil. Then some teachers. Tank Morgana, the Mackenzie siblings Dave, Jill, Daniel, Alice, and Rita. Fortunately, most of them can be found in just a few locations. I think that we can have Dana go for both of your parents. That should panic people a little less. If we leave today, the Drake Rider will be in the capital holding a meeting about something, so we can grab him directly instead of going looking for him. Why they needed to invite a foreign overlord who Carl had met all of twice was a mystery. But if Matilda thought it was necessary, then there was surely some good reason behind it. Chapter 1202. Pancakes bring all the girls. One of the Dragonkin druids came out with a huge stack of berry pancakes, and a happy squealing let Carl know that they had visitors. Lotus and Button skipped into the room with Kara right behind them and an angry old Orcish woman herding them. They're your problem now. I'm gonna fix the lights again. She grumbled, and Carl tried not to laugh at the smug look on Kara's face. They had rearranged the lights in the underground complex last night, then did them again this morning when the staff thought that they had them all fixed. Who did you want to go see first? I am thinking that going to see King Axel and Ahmad would be fastest as they're in the same room. Then they can take you to Othello and Kenichi. Yes, that will work. If we do it right, some of the others will come straight to you. Matilda decided. And you'll send me to go get our parents? Dana asked. Yes, that is good. Actually, I don't need to send Carl to get Neil and Sybil. Ray can do that. I know she's been wanting to go see them again. The Chaos Dragon suggested. That should be entertaining. Is Sybil still at the academy? Carl asked. Yes, but Neil is out on a mission nearby. Whoever goes to invite them will have to find him, then message me to open a portal. Matilda explained. Ray appeared next to them with a huge smile on her face. That sounds like fun. I will go collect my baby rogue and hunt Neil through the wilderness. Maybe we can even hunt monsters together. That sounded like a nightmare for whoever was with Neil, but that wasn't really Carl's problem. Ray likely wouldn't eat them, and a little excitement would keep Neil on his toes. Carl nodded to the dragon. Alright, you might as well start opening the portals and we can get started on collecting the guests. The Chaos Dragon looked like he had just given her a present, and then Carl's vision blurred, and he found himself standing in the Archbishop's office in the Golden Dragon Nation capital with two panicked faces staring back at him. Perfect timing. Gentlemen, I believe that you received an invitation to my wedding? Supreme Lady Matilda has sent me to start picking up the guests from this continent for the festivities. Carl greeted King Axel and Ahmad. Then he frowned and looked around. Shouldn't the Archbishop be here? This is his office. We can grab him at the same time. Ahmad took one slow breath, then began to relax. Carl? He asked slowly. That's when it dawned on him. He had forgotten to transform back into his natural human appearance. Oh right, I got too used to being transformed. Yes, it's me. Carl returned to human form and changed into a casual suit of Ray's creation with golden dragons embroidered down the left sleeve. You really have mastered the art of giving people heart attacks, haven't you? But I'm afraid that the position of Archbishop is open at the moment as they are conducting discussions on which of the new totem-ranked members of the clergy are best suited for the position. Ahmad explained. Carl shrugged. Well then, that saves us finding one more dignitary. I do still need to find Othello, Nact, and Misty though. Oh, and I was told that the Drake rider Kenichi should be around here somewhere. King Axel gave him a confused look. First, how did you know that? Second, how are you so powerful at totem rank? Matilda told me he would be here somewhere. But how do you know I'm powerful? I haven't done anything. Carl replied. You really can't tell? I can feel the oppression from your aura as you stand there. It's like standing next to a mana vein lodestone that has oppression cast on it. Just how much mana do you have? The king asked. Carl snapped his fingers. I get it now. I don't notice because I've been on the Dragon Isles where it's more normal. What if I do this? He put up a nullify as a thin barrier over himself blocking his aura. That's just creepier. It's like you vanished completely even though I can see you. But it's a bit more friendly than the other way. Like you don't have system access at all. Carl shrugged. Well, I will have to work on suppressing my aura later. I just finished upgrading my mental strength and that must have caused the effect to increase. Do you think that you could invite the others who are here in the capital to come meet with me? Or we can go find them around town. I am familiar with their scents and auras, so I should be able to find them on my own if needed. But tracking like that works better with the avatar skill activated. Avatar? What god gave you the blessing of being his avatar on this world? A sharp voice asked from the doorway. Drake Rider Kenichi. Perfect timing, I was just about to go looking for you. Carl greeted the new arrival who he noticed had advanced from overlord to totem rank. So the letter inviting me to your wedding wasn't a prank then? I must admit I was shocked when it showed up in my bedroom. That was something that Carl had never thought to ask. Matilda said that she sent out the invitations after the list was finalized, but he never thought about how she was planning to get them to all the guests. With tiny portals, it would seem. What god's avatar did you become? One of the dragon gods, yes. Perhaps the laughing god? You do seem to have an affinity to chaos. The Drake Rider asked. Carl shook his head. No, the world dragon. I will have to show off the transformation later, it is quite impressive. All three men froze, then Kenichi made a warding gesture across his chest. No way. The avatar of the world dragon has returned to the world? It can't be? The ancient legends say that is the final sign of the resurgence. Soon the ley lines will reach their peak and even the common workers will be system users. He murmured. That was already the case on the Dragon Isles. The residents of this continent were in for some real shocks when they met the members of the Darklight host at the wedding. Chapter 1203 Hunting Guests. While Carl was discussing his advancements with the Golden Dragon Nation's leadership, Ray had Night Haunter active and she was stalking her first wedding guest through the woods near the academy. There was a pair of mountain giant infiltrators only a few kilometers away in the woods transformed to look like humans. They were Neil's target, but he hadn't found their traces yet. The wind had told Ray where they were and she immediately went to investigate thinking that the Inquisitor might be there. He wasn't. But with the mountain giants as bait she knew where he was going to be. That made it much easier to find him and now she was incorporeal and invisible sneaking along behind him as she tested how close she could get before he noticed her. In order to keep the difficulty level up she had hidden her aura as well. But she had faith in the rogue to find a way to locate her before she got close enough to touch him. Maybe she should lick him? Kara seemed to enjoy it. Ray's natural form didn't have taste buds, so she had never seen the appeal. But she could taste things in this form. Still, that was Kara's thing and Kara already knew what totem-ranked rogue tasted like. Ray was 5 meters from Neil when he spun and struck out at the air in her direction, then paused as he activated a skill looking for the threat he had sensed. She leapt up into a tree and let her stealth skills fade. Not bad 5 meters away. Your depth perception is still a little off but not bad. She informed him with a smile. Lady Ray, what brings you to the woods today? Neil asked cautiously. I came to get you for the Carl's wedding. Did you want to finish up here and go back to the academy? It's just those 2 transformed giants, right? She replied. Neil nodded. Did you find them on your way here? Ray smiled. Yes, but I left them for you. They weren't worth messing with. She motioned for silence and led the way through the woods right to the edge of the little camp that the 2 spies had set. Neil vanished then appeared behind the spies, ending them both with a single strike. That should do it. They have been seen stalking students from the academy lately. I don't sense any others around and the reports were just about 2 spies. He explained. Ray shrugged. There were only ever 2 in this camp, but there might be more. The giants like to infiltrate everything before we left. Now, did you want to go to the academy? I left my baby rogue there and the Chaos Dragon says that we need to invite a bunch of teachers too. In that case, why don't we play tag? If we use Shadow Step, it shouldn't take more than an hour to get back. Neil suggested. Tag sounds fun. Nobody will be mad if we spend a little time to practice our skills before going back to the academy. Ray agreed, then poked the Inquisitor and flashed away. Game on. While Ray was having a grand time playing tag with Neil, Dana found herself standing outside a mansion that was somehow both shabby and new at the same time. How that had happened was a mystery. She had asked Matilda to look into it, and her family had been getting monthly transfers that should have made them wealthy without any need to do their own chores. But the house was dirty from a recent dust storm, the yard hadn't been mowed, and the flowers were dying. She took a deep breath to steel herself for what she was likely to find, then double-checked her appearance, so that she would look her best for her mother. A brisk rap at the door brought the sound of scurrying feet, and the sharp features of her mother, more lined with age and stress than she remembered, appeared in the doorway. "Dana? You're really here? It's you, isn't it?" her mother asked, pleading for it to be true. Dana wrapped her arms around the frail figure of her mother. Even with her strength restrained, it felt like she might accidentally break her. "Mom, it's good to see you again. I came to collect you for the wedding," Dana whispered. "Wedding?" her mother asked, confused. "Did you not get the invitation?" "I know that we delivered it," Dana asked, not understanding. Her mother shook her head. "Your father must have collected it. We're not on speaking terms lately. His last business venture was a disaster. The debt collectors take everything every month the moment the government transfers it. He lost billions and now he's missing. Likely off with his mistress." Dana sighed. "You know what, come to the wedding with me and I will get you settled at the guild house afterward. There is no need for you to stay here and suffer from his stupidity and gambling debts anymore. You will love Carl when you meet him, Mom." Dana paused as her mom broke down in tears, just holding her. "We should go. There is nothing in this house that I will miss. If they want it, they can take it," her mother insisted, her voice firm. "Perfect, I will open a portal and we can go collect Carl's parents as well." Her mother nodded and Dana opened a portal, then smiled as she saw a group of men who were very clearly debt collectors running down the street, calling her mother's name. Let her deadbeat father deal with his failed business debts. The collectors wouldn't follow them to the Dragon Isles. The Inquisitors arrived just as the portal closed behind them, leaving two confused members of the clergy facing a dozen irate debt collectors who had just watched their target leave. "Well, that was unexpected. Did the stranger harm the woman who lives here?" the Inquisitor asked. The debt collector shook his head. "No, she just showed up at the door, talked to her for a moment, then they left before we could get here to ask for our overdue payment." The debt collector replied, frustrated by his inability to collect. "Thank you for your assistance. We must be on our way now." The Inquisitor replied, then stepped back through the portal to return to the cathedral. Someone would know where they went. Chapter 1204. Meet the Parents. Dana stood in front of a small house in the lithium mines housing complex, smiling at Carl's mother. "Well, who do we have here? Come in, I will put tea on. This must be your mother." "It's a pleasure to meet you, madam." Dana's mother smiled. "You can call me Wendy, we're to be family, it seems." Carl's mother smiled back at the haggard woman with her messy brown curls, so much like her daughter's. "The government assigned us new identities so that we weren't immediately linked to our son, who apparently has a knack for causing trouble. But you can call us Jake and Ella. Now, did you prefer tea or strong black coffee? There isn't often milk available at the company store, but we might be able to get some," she asked. "Black coffee is good, thank you, Ella," Dana replied with a smile, while Wendy looked confused. "Does your son not send money back? It must be such a hardship living in a tiny mining town," she asked. Carl's mother snorted in amusement while his father chuckled. "Oh, we stay at a place in the capital for a few months every year during the down season when it's too cold for the factories to properly process the lithium and the stockpile is full. But I'm the head of workers here. The town might not be glamorous and the mines aren't a pleasant place, but it's been better now that they've got me to speak with the big boss for them. If I left, the job would go to some crony who doesn't give a damn and pockets any savings he can find. Probably plus all the bonuses and overtime pay like the last one did." That explained a lot about why he was passionate about his work here at the mines. Things had always been, and most likely always would be, bad for the miners. But when you had managers above them who were skimming their benefits or outright embezzling from the company, things would be even worse. "I hope you booked some time off," Dana joked as the coffee brewed. Jake nodded. "Indeed. I booked it the day that I got the notice. Took a few tries to convince the boss that my Carl wasn't dead but off on a secret government mission. But there is enough of that going on with the Inquisition and the more powerful elites that he didn't argue too hard." As if speaking about him had summoned him, there was a knock at the door, and an elderly man in a pinstriped suit stood with the mayor, a commander-rank warrior who was rapidly approaching his middle years. He had been one of the earliest successful test subjects for the elite program, and now that he was approaching 40, the years and experimental treatments were catching up with him. "Overlord, welcome to Lithium Mines Village. Might we ask what brings you here today? Or is it just a social visit?" the mayor began. Dana smiled and stood to shake their hands. "Mayor, mine boss. It's a pleasure to formally meet you. I am actually just here to pick up my father-in-law for my wedding." You see, we're holding it in the Dragon Isles, so it simply wouldn't be feasible to invite our families to come without sending a mage to open a portal for them. Dana explained. The mine boss nodded, but the mayor froze in shock. Miss Dana? The fastest mage in history to reach commander rank? You are marrying Carl? Dana giggled. We get that response a lot. But yes, I am. 2 overlords in one family. Now that is enviable. Please accept my humble wishes for your future prosperity. The mayor replied. Actually, Carl is a totem already. That is part of the reason why I came instead of having him come collect his own parents. There are some restrictions on moving totems around the nation, you see. Dana explained. That was a fact that Carl was rapidly realizing as more people noticed the presence of another totem in the capital city. And it was about to be very hard to miss him. Totem Carl, if you would please transform and place your draconic paw on the mark at the side of the temple. That should certify your status and finish activating the features of the temple. An elderly high priest explained, his hands clutching at the gold trim of his white robes. He was one of the world dragon clerics in the capital and would have been one of the top contenders for leadership of the church if he had been more powerful. Lady Othello stood on Carl's left, waiting expectantly with the sword he had made for her hanging from her hip, even in her ornate formal robes. She was a paladin, but politics had dragged her into the struggle for the leadership of the church, as she had also reached the totem rank. All right. I will see what I can do to bring all the functions back online. Don't worry, I have some experience with this. Carl agreed, then transformed and let Behemoth expand his dragon form for a bit more visual shock factor. At this size, the mark on the temple roof nearly perfectly matched his foot, which Carl gently placed in the outline, then gave the temple a pulse of mana to see if it had dormant functions. It was the temple used for advancements, and it had been vital to the success of the church after he had left the continent. But when Carl started the process, runes lit up all over the surface and the temple began to demand an enormous amount of mana. That was something that Carl could provide even when it started to demand something more. The power of a fundamental rule. Carl's understanding of the fundamental rule of mana manipulation wasn't complete. Far from it. But it was enough to satisfy the temple, which sent a burst of golden light high into the sky for a few seconds before the power faded. Carl nodded in satisfaction as he examined the changes. It wasn't anything new to the temple, but an improvement on what it could already do. The temple had been able to give advanced classes to those who qualified, but it should have been able to give rare classes and even reward supplicants with rare skills that had been saved in its magical memory. Now it should be useful to everyone right up to totem rank. But they had definitely attracted attention. Chapter 1205. Annoying the neighbors. A large portal opened in the courtyard, and Carl noticed that everyone was immediately on guard, including Kenichi. Through the portal, a dozen totem-ranked mages strolled, looking confident in their power and authority. Who is this? We sensed an exiled soul returning to the continent without permission. One of the mages demanded. Carl smiled down at him, fangs glistening. I am Carl. And your demand for exile no longer holds any power over me. I will go where I please. He explained in Draconic. The mages frowned, then read the nameplate over his head and looked confused. They had never seen a person with a marking on their name like that. That is not how it works. You are exiled for life from this continent. The mage insisted. Or I could simply fly in and take one of your nations and call it my own. Then I would have the right to vote to nullify my own exile, would I not? I think that this arrangement where I simply come visit as I please will be much less work. Carl countered. Othello chuckled. Some things never changed. Whatever part of Carl's brain was responsible for telling him that he was in danger had never developed. Fear simply didn't compute for him. But Othello couldn't know that Carl really had nothing to fear from these mages. Even 10-on-1, they didn't stand a chance against him. The mages began to cast a spell, and Kara immediately nullified it while Carl smirked at them. With the long tongue of a totem-rank dragon, he licked a wet trail up the side of one of the mages' faces. As I said, I will do what I want. Even if you try to cast something to stop me, you can't. I suggest that you behave. I am just here to collect the guests for my wedding and to take care of some maintenance on the World Dragon's relics. Once I am done that, I will collect a few teachers from the academy and return home. Everyone will be returned in a few days once the festivities are over. Carl explained. The mages tried individually to cast something, but Carl simply activated Overwhelming Presence and let the terror effect freeze their actions for a few seconds before he deactivated it. See, you're slowly learning. There is nothing you can do to stop me. Nothing. Even if I let you cast spells, you couldn't harm me, and your warriors do not have a weapon that could pierce my hide. Carl informed them smugly. The mages were definitely not happy about it, but they were realists. The man they exiled had gained an immense amount of power, and they could no longer do anything to stop him from doing what he wanted. If anyone might be able to, it would be the mythic Black Dragon, or possibly Nacht, who was one of the closest to advancement among the ancient dragons. But neither of them were strong allies of the humans, and with his form so convincingly changed, Carl might be on better terms with the dragons than they were. They were right. Drawn by the chaos and the aura of impending death, Nacht came out of seclusion within the capital temple to observe the chaos, and immediately recognized Carl. I should have known that you would have something to do with this sort of chaos. Welcome back to the Golden Dragon Nation, Nacht announced with a wry chuckle. It's a pleasure to see you again, old friend. Your niece has become a core member of my guild and quite the indispensable part of the Overlord ranked raiding team. Carl replied. The Black Dragon smirked. To think a Black Dragon is actually making friends. She sends me regular messages, you know. She's been working hard to surpass her namesake. Nacht wasn't wrong. Naksha had been working hard to surpass him. Not out of any sense of rivalry, though. Simply because she didn't want to be left behind if her friends advanced. She had worked hard to find them. Or she had worked hard and suffered many disappointments until she met them, depending on how you looked at it. Because right now she was napping and preparing to go into the dungeon as a healer and observer before Matilda sent her off to the wedding venue. Half the team had been part of Sapphire's experiments on upgrading classes, and she needed data on the improvements while the team still needed healers. Carl turned to the group of totem-ranked foreign mages. Would you like to accompany us? I am sure we have the space to arrange for a few more guests. Weddings are a joyous occasion, and you can think of it as networking with all the totems and myths that will be there. Even the immortal regent and supreme Lady Matilda will be in attendance. A real who's who of the world, really. The mages considered it for a moment, then shook their heads. No, we should return home. We will consider this a misunderstanding, and please accept our best wishes for your married life. Then they turned and left through the portal they had entered from. King Axel cleared his throat. Have we caused enough panic and dismay in the city yet? You know that the residents can feel it when a new totem arrives and when we all gather. So half the lower-ranked elites are going to be in a panic by now with all that power that was given off when you upgraded the temple. The man had a good point. But they were also going to panic when Carl took everyone away for the wedding. Maybe you should make an announcement? Something about leaving a subordinate in charge while you go to a foreign totem's wedding. Carl suggested. King Axel shook his head in dismay. Announcing that we really are leaving the capital and not just hiding our aura inside one of the instances would just encourage the giants to do something dumb and violent again. I am sure that we didn't get all the spies and traitors. Should I ask someone to come and keep a watch while we're gone? It wouldn't take much for me to hire a team of totem-ranked mercenaries to keep order in the city while we are gone. Carl offered. Kenichi chuckled at the thought. If the Dragon Isles had so many totems that there were mercenary teams for hire perhaps being exiled, there was not the punishment that they thought. It might be tough to get respect or to get settled in, but clearly Carl was living well there. Chapter 1206. Family Reunion. Carl transformed back to human and adjusted the casual suit he had chosen for the day. Well, now that the annoyances are gone, should we head to the academy and gather more of the guests? I believe that Lady Ray and Miss Dana should both be headed there unless they are going straight back to the Dragon Isles after they collect their first few guests. He suggested. Nax smiled. A trip to the academy sounds fun. I haven't been there in ages. King Axel nodded. If your wedding is going to disrupt the class schedule, we should at least give the academy the honor of a personal visit to explain why. Carl double-checked the people present. All right, we need the King Ahmad, Othello, Nacht, and Kenichi from the capital. Then I need to find Bishop Misty and the 4 Mackenzie siblings. The rest are at the academy or have someone already going to find them. How did you even get invitations to all these people if you don't know where they are? Ahmad asked. The Supreme Lady delivered them. It's not a big deal for someone who has surpassed immortality to deliver a few invitations around a planet she's guarded for millennia. The hard part was done by the ones who hand-wrote all the invitations. Carl explained. Nax smiled. Then you're in luck. All 4 Mackenzie siblings are in the academy right now. 2 as teachers and 2 as student advisors. That really did make things easy, and Carl simply opened a portal to the front gates of the academy large enough for them to walk through. Wait for me, wait for me. A squeaky, youthful voice shouted as he was about to step through. Misty, it's good to see you again. Are you all ready? Or should I open a portal from the academy back to your place? I know how it is when you get caught up with things. Carl asked. The time dragon's shimmering hair fluttered in the wind as she threw her head back and laughed. Technically, I'm not late. I got here just in time. But I've packed everything that I need. Lady Ray has new dresses for the ladies, so I won't need much. Carl nodded in understanding. Like Matilda, Misty could see both the future and the past. So she would already know most of what was to come and would have prepared accordingly. On the other side of the portal, a half-dozen curious teachers and staff were waiting to see who was coming through. So when they saw that it was Carl with a strange white-haired girl who came through first, they were utterly baffled. The official story that the agency had told everyone was that he had suffered an accident and was no longer an active elite. Normally that meant one of 3 things. Either he was dead, had joined the Inquisition, or he was out of the country on a secret mission. One of the 2 was a possibility, but seeing him come back as a totem accompanied by so many of the nation's strongest was enough to cause great concern. Totem? What brings you here today? The vice principal asked as Carl ushered the others through the portal. Good tidings as it happens. You see, I have invited a number of my close friends to my wedding which is being held overseas. So I came to pick them up in person. Carl replied. Someone we haven't noticed? The vice principal asked. Lady Ray Bloodbath, my bonded spider. She is with Inquisitor Neil in the back training grounds. I can sense them from here, but I wouldn't expect you to. They're sneaky like that. Carl explained. The vice principal took a steadying breath. At least the Bloodbath spider was with an Inquisitor. Then another portal opened only meters away and Dana stepped through with Carl's parents, and one other woman who Carl assumed was her own mother. The fact that she had left her father behind wasn't missed by him, but Carl wisely chose not to say anything about it or the fact that Dana's mother was wearing a dress that Ray had made for Dana. Oh, we're all here now. Mom, Dad, it's good to see you again. Carl moved to give his mom a hug, then pulled her to his chest as he shook his father's hand. The aging miner smiled proudly at his son and motioned at the fine suit. Well, aren't you all fancy now? Looking like the mine boss himself and standing at the top of the power structure. I'm proud of you, son. Carl smiled happily. Thanks, Dad. Those simple words meant a lot to him. His dad wasn't one who easily gave out praise to anyone. Ray appeared behind Dana where she could assess the need to upgrade the clothing of Carl's parents, and Carl laughed at the confused rogue in her arms. Sybil, it's good to see you again. How are the new ears doing? Carl asked. Still far too sensitive. But when I am working, that's a good thing. I made commander on my second year just like I promised Mistress Ray. So they let me go out on missions and do things. Even Inquisitor Neil has been really helpful and I'm learning so many new things now. Sybil explained. Her accent was still a little off, possibly the result of having been deaf for most of her life before Kara and Lotus fixed her ears. But Ray's baby rogue was incredibly excited about her new job. From the background, Neil winked at Carl, letting him know that she was being vetted as an inquisitorial candidate. That would actually be the perfect job for an assassin sponsored by Ray and trained by Neil. Plus, it suited her personality. Sybil had never been shy about doing what she thought needed to be done to reach her goals. Chapter 1207. Teachers Guild. Ahmad whispered something to one of the teachers who nodded and then gave him a thumbs up. The teachers have organized themselves as a guild now that the system functions are coming back online. So we can just send guild messages when we need to talk to each other. She explained. Carl nodded. That is convenient. I've got most of the craftsmen and all of the senior crafters in the Darklight host with me. We've also got a guild house set up with a guild store so we can easily transfer crafted items around and distribute wages. He could see the teachers making notes. That function might not be online here yet, but they also simply might not have noticed it yet. With the academy being their base of operations, it would be easy enough to set it as the guild house for the teachers guild. Then the supply room could become the guild store. It would be a huge improvement in inventory management as the system logged everything that was sold or stocked. But that was not Carl's problem. Ray had vanished again and he wasn't sure where she had gone. Then she reappeared with an arm wrapped around Morgana and an excited smile on her face. You will love this look. It's perfect for you and I've been waiting for just the right time to be able to deliver it. Don't worry, I have more dresses for the actual wedding trip. Try it on. Ray informed the witch doctor. The outfit was a long silk corseted gown with spiderweb pattern embroidery, a gossamer caplet that had runes glowing around the edges. Not actual runecrafting runes, but additional effects added through Ray's master tailoring abilities using glowing threads. Then Ray added a thin veil and headscarf and Morgana giggled. I feel like a princess. She laughed. Ray nodded and Carl shrugged. You look like a princess. A goth spider princess, but still a princess. It's a good match. Bob Mackenzie shook his head in dismay as he walked up to the scene. Who would have thought? After all this time, the monster man is back and he's taught a bloodbath spider how to make clothing. Ray winked at him. Would you like me to cocoon you as well? I can make something wonderfully fashionable? The warrior shook his head. Perhaps a suit for the wedding, but I'm good for now. Slowly the other guests made their way across the grounds. Everyone had been in the middle of teaching a class other than Doug Mackenzie, who was working in the infirmary and had to finish healing a broken leg before he came over. Kara came out of her space to greet all the new people and then settled on climbing up Doug, who was happy to carry her, so she didn't have to look up to see what was going on. Carl made a round of greetings before everyone went over to congratulate Dana on the wedding. I can't believe that it's actually happening. Did you know that when you were still here at the academy there was a betting pool on whether you two would end up together by the time that you graduated? I suppose that you would have graduated by now, so the pool would be decided. But still we need to get a bard here to write out your story. Jill, Dana's former personal tutor from the Bureau of Elite Development, joked. Dana smiled back at her. I would say that it's a big win. Look how far we've come. Who would have thought that in just these few years since we joined the academy we would be an overlord and a totem running a guild branch on the Dragon Isles with over 100 craftsmen working under us. The teachers all looked suitably impressed by his accomplishments, but Daniel and Alice, the pair who had been assigned by the Bureau to guide Carl, began to laugh. Did you know that we actually followed through with the Lightning Sarrow farm in your name? They have a herd of over 100 now, and the techniques that you left behind have allowed an entire force of beast rangers to rise among the senior rangers. Alice explained. Thor would be overjoyed to hear that. I wasn't sure what would happen to that investment after I disappeared from the country. But to think that they not only followed through but named it after me. That's impressive. Carl replied. They did more than that. The housing development you funded was built near the farm, and it's become a training retreat for Green Dragon clerics, nature lovers, and rangers. Nearly 2,000 people live there now. Colonel Valerie oversees it for obvious reasons. But I think that she actually enjoys living there with so much nature around her. Alice added. Carl shrugged. I can't blame her. Living among nature is always pleasant. I spend most of my time inside the city now, and it's a relaxing outing to go into the wilderness for reasons that don't involve combat. That made the teachers laugh. There was nothing in the wilderness that didn't involve at least the risk of combat. But when you were both at the totem rank and Carl, you could probably go out and pet a wild monster for fun. The Green Dragon clerics would be jealous. Hopefully he never taught that trick to them. They would be unstoppable menaces to society. Little did they know it was already too late. Lotus knew. If not friend, why friend shaped. With that skill on her side, nearly everything became pettable. Should we prepare lunch? Or are you all leaving right away? The vice principal asked. We're actually heading out right away. It wouldn't do to keep the Supreme Lady waiting. Plus I've got dozens of guild messages that I've been ignoring from the crafting team, and about custom orders from the guild's alliance members for their raiding teams. Carl sighed. A guild alliance? Raiding teams? Bob Mackenzie asked eagerly. Oh, I have so much to tell you. The dungeons around Drod, my new hometown, are royal and monarch ranked, so I'm sure that we can arrange for some of the guests to go through them later. But in Xylaz, entire teams of 40 overlords or totems will join together to clear more powerful dungeons. It's quite the sight, and the need for gear is never ending. Carl explained. Bob smiled. Well, perhaps we don't have to rush back right after the wedding. Chapter 1208. Borrowing Teachers. The vice principal looked pained. He didn't object to letting the teachers take some vacation time to attend a wedding, but how was he going to get them back afterward if Carl was going to offer them unlimited access to a dungeon on their level? Even though Carl had graduated, he was still giving them headaches. We are going to need our teachers and leaders back, Totem. I understand that everyone is excited about getting to see new places, but there is a power balance to maintain, please understand. The vice principal pleaded. It was a sad sight to have such an elderly mage pleading to have his employees returned, and it softened even Carl's heart a little to see it. You know, now that the balance between the continents is starting to restore itself to some minor degree, I could probably arrange for a regular portal route between Drod and the Academy. It would allow the strongest teachers to continue to advance, and it would give a reason for royal and monarch ranked elites to return to the Academy, where you could try to shame them into helping out. Carl offered. The vice principal looked immediately relieved. Most of the teachers have reached royal rank already. The power advancements have made huge gains for the Academy, but we also send them to the commander rank dungeon as often as we are able so that they don't fall behind in their growth. He agreed. Royal rank was considered below average in strength for the Dragon Isles, but there were dungeons suitable for them near Drod. The best one was for the monarchs, but that was fine too. Then once they got more teachers and elites to overlord rank, they could start spreading them out. Why don't you just make them a trial? You can just set it to adjust to the power level of the person who enters. Kara suggested. She was very fond of her new skill, and if Carl carved it into a large stone, they could make a super fancy gift for the Academy. Kara has a good idea. If we delay returning for a bit, I can make you a trial ground for the Academy. I know that you had an awakened dungeon nearby now, but I can make one that will be good all the way up to overlord rank, though it might not be as good without the dungeon's rewards. Carl added. That got the attention of everyone. You can make a trial ground? Like a repeatable test? Ahmad asked. Carl nodded. Yes, and I am quite sure that I can tailor it to adjust to the power level of the ones who enter so that it's always a challenge until they get too powerful for my abilities. The Catman mage nearly purred in satisfaction when he heard that. If the standard was that the team entering had to be weaker than Carl, wouldn't that be nearly everyone in the entire nation? If he went in alone, he wasn't sure that he could beat Carl. So if Carl could make a whole dungeon on his level, even the leaders of the Golden Dragon Nation would be able to refine their skills in his trial ground. Just how powerful would these monsters be? Ahmad asked just to confirm. Carl winked at him. Not more powerful than my current golems. But I do have the Greater Golem and Epic Golem spells. Oh, I suppose I could put an undead army in there as well. Those things are great opponents because they come in larger numbers. The mage gave him an envious look and Carl chuckled. I will see about getting you a copy of the skill books later. I'm sure that the blue dragons would go crazy over it. I'm surprised that they don't have you locked up until you make them more books. Rita joked from the back of the crowd. Rita, come up here, I have a present for you. The warrior came forward cautiously and Carl spent a half-second deciding what path was best for her. She was an agility-type warrior now, so nothing too brute force. That sort of new class wouldn't suit her. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, hemotoxic strikes. Will be transferred to the loyal soldier Rita. Hemotoxic strikes, wounds from physical strikes inflicted by the user, will not heal naturally. Rita smiled and her eyes went vacant as she entered the class selection menu. Tank watched the process with a frown on his face. You just taught her a new skill, didn't you? I can sense the bias toward pretty ladies from here. Carl laughed. Come over here and I will give you something good too. It's not a pretty lady exclusive skill. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, Elemental's Wrath. Will be transferred to the pork rind enthusiast Tank. Elemental's Wrath epic grade transformation skill. Grants limited invulnerability, adds 250% fire damage to all attacks, causes Berserk, increasing strength by 100%. That was not a descriptor that Carl had ever expected to see. How much did you have to like a snack before the system would name it as part of your personality? Even Lotus didn't get a snack or sweet-related nickname. Tank roared in victory and transformed into a 3-meter-tall flaming elemental made of black volcanic stone. Then he grew again to 4 meters tall as he activated the rest of his enrage-type skills. Bob Mackenzie sighed. He will be insufferable now, you know that, right? With the ability to set himself on fire, he will never lose another grappling match. Carl frowned at his old friend. Has he ever lost a grappling match in the first place? Ahmad cleared his throat and Carl shrugged. Sorry, I'll have to get to you later. I've hit my 2-use-a-day limit for the skill. But I will get you more golems soon. Now where should I put up a trial ground here? Do we have an unused building site? Maybe somewhere that's undergoing renovations? If he just kept handing out skills, they would never leave. But Dana could also help him with the skill books later if he was going to keep up the act. They had built a huge number of new buildings at the academy in the last few years, so there really should be somewhere that he could add just one more. Chapter 1209, Training Location. The old mage training grounds are unused right now. You know the ones where you used to go with Hawk to harass water mages? Rita suggested. Hawk laughed from his nest. Picking on water mages was fun. Carl stopped at the training grounds and wrapped his arm around his mother. Would you like to see something incredible? I know that most of this is overwhelming, but I swear that it's actually pretty cool once you're used to it. He whispered. His mother shook her head in dismay. You left me as a skinny teenage boy starting puberty, and now look at you. Taller than your father, all muscles, and such a strong elite that even the headmaster of the school is polite to you. The other elites began to chuckle, and Rita leaned over to whisper in her ear. You probably can't tell with their auras restrained, but Carl is most likely the most powerful person standing here. And not just in raw strength, he's got incredible wealth and valuable skills as well. The place he went to after he left the Golden Dragon Nation has magic beyond anything that we have ever seen here. She explained quietly. Carl's mother looked to him for confirmation and Carl shrugged, then picked up Kara to pet the badger's back. Kara here could likely beat up half the academy on her own. But power isn't everything. I would like to think that I've built up a reputation that would make you proud as well. Carl insisted. Dana snickered at the idea. Yes, Carl had a reputation all right. Whether it was a good one or not depended on who you asked. But there was no denying that he was highly valued for his skills and power. Carl gathered mana to cast Earth Manipulation. But Tion and Opal were getting excited about helping, so Carl didn't cast the spell himself. Instead, he channeled the mana to the pair of reclusive beasts who had a grand vision of what a trial tower should look like. Opal had seen the Gothic cathedrals of the capital today, and while they weren't the most popular of architecture, this was called the Golden Dragon Nation, and nothing else looked like it should have a dragon perched on the roof. They were simply the most suitable style of architecture for the location. According to Opal. So they built a 5-story cathedral with a large belfry that would be the main trial tower structure. Illusionary Domain was limited in how much she could expand a space, so the tower portion would be mostly stationary trials. But in the cathedral area she could create something more like a dungeon or large combat field. Alright, we have a list of things we need added to stones. Opal informed Carl before presenting a list in her space for him to make. Some of the spells needed elemental affinity to the material for stability, so Carl took out stones from storage and began carving them as everyone watched, then placing them back in Opal's space. The parts that only needed enough power for the desired ability he just created with Earth Manipulation and runecrafting directly in Tion's space so the fox could drop them in the spots he wanted them as they constructed the ornate cathedral theme structure. The belfry tower actually had a dragon made of stone wrapped around it, extending over the top where victorious challengers would be able to exit the trials. Ooh, we should have lights or something so people can watch and see how many trials the current challenger has finished. We already wanted to make them harder with every victory, so there should be a ranking. Tion suggested. Light up dragon scales. That's almost as good as glowing feathers. Hawk suggested. Good idea. That's an easy spell with holy light. I can add that to the building as I finish it. Tion cheered. Kara returned to her space to assist with setting up the challenges, and because her assistance would be needed to properly randomize the trials and rewards. Carl knew the randomize spell, and that could be added to a runic item designed to make gifts, but with Chaotic Zone it would be so much better. Carl's parents watched in awe as he created an entire cathedral in front of them in the course of 10 minutes. That sort of power was unlike anything that they had ever considered possible. They had heard that elites could destroy massive areas with their attacks, but nobody had ever mentioned that they could simply construct massive works of architectural mastery with pure willpower and magic. Plus, when had Carl learned about architecture? It surely hadn't been long enough for him to get an engineering degree. If either of them were well versed in architectural engineering, they would have known that he clearly didn't have one. The building existed despite the laws of nature, and the strength of regular stone should not have supported this design. But the true wonders were hidden inside and waiting for Carl to finish the spells. Carl wove Illusionary Domain and Chaotic Zone together into one spell effect imbued into the inner walls of the building. So while they were desperately curious as to what was going on, none immediately made a move to visit the academy. Not even the Emperor of Nubon, though he knew exactly which of the exiles had returned for a visit, and he sensed a strangely familiar presence with him. He was going to have to talk to his bonded weapon. She had definitely been up to no good at some point, because not just anybody could obtain a haint claw. If it was all grown up and at totem rank, it was likely to be nearly uncontrollable, so he wasn't too worried yet. But he was certain that Carl was in for a tough time when that sapling of a living weapon gained sentience. A haint claw sapling that was currently napping in his mental space because construction projects didn't interest her nearly as much as destruction projects and challenges did. Sitting in a room down the hall, Lifa giggled at his silly notions. It wasn't that sentient weapons couldn't be controlled. It was just that her wielder was a boring jerk and she didn't want to see his face. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.